It's been a while. Yeah, I know it's pretty bad. I haven't uploaded in 3 months, but what's important is I'm back now. For how long? I don't really know, but let's just enjoy it while it lasts. Anyways, it's been a fair few chapters since I've actually covered this series on this channel, and a lot has definitely happened. Sarada unlocked her Mangekyo Sharingan. Konohamaru continued to show us exactly why we were right in selling all of his stocks back in part 1, and my man Boruto has decided to just hand over his life to Jura, it seems like. Now, I'd love to cover all of these topics in a lot of depth, but I fear I'm a little bit too late for the Mangekyo party, so I think I should just talk about the most relevant topic going forward, which is how on earth is my guy Boruto getting out of this mess he has found himself in against Jura. And a little bit of a spoiler of what's to come in this video, I just think the situation just seems a little bit weird right now. Kashin Koji seems adamant that Boruto stands absolutely no chance against Jura, and at this point I'm kind of on his side. With Uzuhiko being nullified, Boruto has really been pushed into a corner right now, but it's not like they're going to kill Boruto again and have him come back to life like he did in part 1. And also Boruto is the main character, he realistically just isn't going to die, which is why I'm slightly confused as to why Kashin Koji genuinely believes here that Boruto will just outright die. Is 10 Directions not showing him the full picture? Is there something which is being hidden from him by a higher power? It really just doesn't make complete sense to me. Well, for starters, 10 Directions clearly isn't showing Boruto losing outright, because in chapter 21, Kashin Koji quite literally stated that Uzuhiko might work against Jura. Like, big emphasis on might because it obviously didn't, but it was the fact that Kashin Koji kind of wasn't 100% sure if Uzuhiko would work or not. It makes me kind of wonder, is 10 Directions as foolproof as we kind of thought? Like, what do you mean might work? You can literally see into the future. You should be the one telling us whether it's going to work or not. And I know it comes down to there being tons of different futures, all of which have different conclusions to how Jura will react to Boruto hitting him with Uzuhiko. But then we also have the idea that Kashin Koji has been reiterating to everyone that Boruto literally cannot beat Jura. So if Uzuhiko might work, then surely Boruto's chances were never actually zero. So I feel as though this leaves a little wiggle room for Boruto to not be killed in this battle. But it's pretty unclear as of right now as to how Boruto will pull this off. But the most popular consensus between the community at the moment is that Momoshiki will be the reason that Boruto is able to get out of here alive, which I think does make a lot of sense. Momoshiki has been radio silent for the entirety of 2 Blue Vortex, and he's only got literally 1 or 2 mentions in 21 chapters, which for one of the main villains in the story is a long time to just be lurking in the background. It feels like with him being so prevalent towards the end of part 1, the writers are just trying to build up the anticipation for his return, and I feel like him fighting Jura would be a perfect way of reintroducing Momoshiki back into the story. Boruto's karma is obviously going to be important for Boruto to master in the future, since as I'm sure you are all aware, he is shown using it in the flash forward sequence off the rip, which to me implies he feels comfortable with using it freely at that point in the story. But sooner or later, Boruto is going to have to learn or at least start using that power. I was always a believer from the moment that it was revealed as to why Boruto isn't using the karma, that Jura would be the one to push Boruto into a corner, forcing him to use the karma. But at the same time, I never understood how Jura would ever be able to force Boruto to actually face him, because if there were any direct confrontation between these two, Boruto would always have the ability to fly away or teleport away using the Flying Thunder God. Now, Kashin Koji tried to explain that it required Boruto a lot of time to use longer distance Flying Raijin, but at the same time, in every instance of Boruto using this jutsu over a long distance, it really didn't take him that much time. Take this situation for example. Boruto was able to teleport to the battlefield before Kashin Koji was even able to react or stop him. But I don't really buy the whole idea that Boruto isn't able to at least teleport to a safe distance away from Jura, and then once he reaches that point, he can further teleport to a location where Jura is unable to find him. Which is why I always thought a situation of Boruto getting pushed into a corner where he literally has no option but to use the karma was very unlikely. But in the current circumstances, we have to appreciate the way that the situation has been set up, which hints very heavily that Boruto has no option but to continue fighting Jura, despite him in his base standing absolutely no chance. Because it's established that Jura knows where Konohamaru and also Mitsuki and the others are located, which means that if Boruto were to teleport away, Jura would instead turn his attention to those guys, which Boruto knows means all of his comrades would end up dying, and on top of that, Jura would be able to get Ryu and Matsuri's Storm Soul back. And with Boruto paralleling his father's ideal so heavily, we know that Boruto is going to at least lay down his own life before he allows someone to kill his comrade. So with that being established, it's clear that the writers have intentionally put Boruto in a situation where the karma is his only option. I think where a lot of people are getting confused or at least going wrong is the idea that if Boruto uses the karma, Momoshiki will just take over straight away, which I really don't think is the case whatsoever. Think about every one of Boruto's previous cases of using the karma. None of them provoked Momoshiki to awaken immediately. There was one instance back in part 1, I think it was chapter 78, where Momoshiki was able able to momentarily take over Boruto's body to free Kawaki from Shikamaru's shadow paralysis, but Momoshiki could not keep control over Boruto's body because Boruto was not low on chakra and he also wasn't suffering mentally. And I think it's pretty clear, or it's been established, that either of those have to be true in order for Momoshiki to be able to push Boruto's consciousness far back enough, allowing his one to come through and have control over Boruto's body. However, to contradict my own point, something seems to be different after the time skip. When Boruto's karma manifested right at the start of 2 Blue Vortex, Boruto was instructed to run immediately to stop himself from being taken over. Kashin Koji stated in that scenario that if the karma continued to manifest, Boruto would lose control, which doesn't entirely make sense to me, as what has changed that means Boruto, as soon as he uses his karma now, will allow Momoshiki to have free reign over his body. You could argue that it was Boruto dying and him becoming full Otsutsuki that allows Momoshiki to do this, but like I said, Boruto used the karma previously and Momoshiki wasn't able to take over his body entirely. So I don't entirely understand why now all of a sudden Boruto is completely unable to use his karma without being taken over. But I'm going to look at both sides of the coin here. One being Boruto fights Jura using his karma, still loses, but it's obviously a lot closer this time, and at that moment Boruto doesn't necessarily die, but instead Momoshiki takes over, allowing us to get Borushiki versus Jura, which obviously reintroduces Momoshiki, but it's also a muchly anticipated fight among the fans, where we want to see how strong Momoshiki is when he has control over Boruto's body. Because if you think back to part 1, how strong Borushiki was with Boruto, who really was maybe low Kage level, and obviously Boruto now in his base is an Otsutsuki level threat, and maybe even beyond, he's going close to Jura in terms of power. If Momoshiki takes over, everyone, myself included obviously, all of us just want to see how strong is Borushiki gonna be. Or the other side of the coin is Boruto uses his karma and Momoshiki fights Jura in the instant it manifests, or at least Momoshiki makes some sort of appearance as soon as Boruto uses his karma. Now the way it's been set up, I think Boruto knows himself that he is going to need to use the karma in this battle if everything goes wrong and nothing works against Jura. I think Boruto is definitely at the bare minimum mentally prepared to have to use his karma here, which to me is why he wanted Konohamaru to get as far away from the battlefield as possible with everyone else along with him. Not just so Jura couldn't track him down if he were to be defeated, but also if Momoshiki were to emerge, then they aren't at risk from Momoshiki targeting them as well. Theoretically, Momoshiki could have been scheming for the last 3 years, which I know a lot of people believe is the case, which is partly why everyone is so excited for him to return. So it would be safe to assume that if Boruto were to lose control to Momoshiki, it would at least be somewhat part of Momoshiki's plan to force Boruto to fall into despair, like he was trying to get Boruto to do in part 1, by targeting the people that Boruto loves. I don't want to go too in depth into Momoshiki's plan once he takes over Boruto's body, because I think that could be an entire discussion for a different video, so I'll save that for another time and let me know if that's something that you want to see in the future. Instead, I want to talk about how I think this fight will go with Karma Boruto against Jura. I still think Boruto loses to Jura because realistically, if Boruto in his Karma state was stronger than Jura, either Jura isn't the final villain or Jura just needs to get a lot stronger. Now don't get me wrong, Jura is set up in a way where he can grow in power because he is constantly seeking information, trying to grow himself and his army, so it would make sense for Jura to try and get up to Boruto's level, but again, that just seems a little bit upside down. The whole ninja way, the whole system on what Boruto kind of believes in and kind of goes along with is he is going to be the one to train to get to the level of Jura, and that's realistically going to be the more likely option. Don't get me wrong, Boruto is going to be much stronger in this form. He's going to land a couple good blows against Jura, maybe slightly put him on the defensive when Jura just isn't ready for Boruto to be this much stronger, but eventually Jura's going to adapt. He's going to push Boruto into another corner where I think that Kawaki is going to appear, but I'm going to discuss that entire situation slightly later in the video. I just want to talk about the other option, which is when Boruto tries to use his karma, he gets the same sensation like he described when he tried to use it against Code with Sasuke, where he stated it was like he was dying from the inside. Alternatively, you could take the Code battle as an example, where Boruto had that sort of random heart attack, allowing Momoshiki to take over. So I either see it as Boruto manages to land a couple good blows against Jura, it's established that Jura is still stronger, which again, to me, makes a lot more sense, or he has a heart attack, he dies from the inside, whatever, allowing Momoshiki to take over as soon as he uses that karma. Now, Boruto having a heart attack only happened as a result of Boruto unlocking the Karma V2, or actually extracting Momoshiki's full power inside of himself, which could in turn be the reason why Momoshiki could take over, as the more Boruto used Momoshiki's power, the closer Momoshiki is to Boruto's consciousness, which also means the requirements are lessened for him to be able to take over. All of these are definitely possibilities, but I think since Momoshiki hasn't been shown as of yet in 2 Blue Vortex, with him realistically still having a big role in the story going forward, with how everything is set up, he will likely emerge some way or another in this battle against Jura. Jura, as he will too be aware that if Boruto dies to Jura, so does he, which we know Otsutsuki's are terrified of the concept of death, hence why they're so obsessed with his karma, resurrection, all that kind of stuff. So Momoshiki will do anything to prevent himself from being erased along with Boruto, despite his hatred towards him. But I think it's what actually happens after this battle which will be more interesting for the future of this story, as I believe that there will be two factors that coincide with Momoshiki's re-emergence, and these factors are both Kawaki and awakened Shinki showing up to the battlefield. So going over Shinki, I really like the idea that I've seen going about that after the Thorn Bulb is returned to Shinki, he will fuse with the remnants of the Thorn Soul, not only granting him with the Rinnegan, but the physical capabilities that Ryu would previously have. I feel like this would not only just make sense literally with the way the restoration of the vessel is worded, it seems very intentional that it's hinting towards the body and the tree becoming one, but also if we think narratively, it will give a lot of lesser characters a massive boost in power, which means that any person that is turned into a tree has that latent potential for a huge power up, giving them a little bit more relevance in the story going forward, which has been a massive part of Two Blue Vortex, which is bringing lesser characters and giving them a big stage, a big voice, some importance in the story. Because as we all know, part one, towards the end especially, was literally just a Boruto, Kawaki, and maybe just a code show, to be honest with you. That was about all it was. And it also could be a way to reinstate Sasuke's Rinnegan, which realistically, with how all these new gen characters have scaled during the time skip, we no longer need Sasuke to be nerfed to allow these new gen characters to shine, as a lot of these characters are realistically gonna give full power Sasuke a run for his money. And before you OG Naruto fans get mad at that, that's no disrespect to Sasuke. He was one of the strongest characters of his time, but a common theme ran across the entire series is the idea of the next generation always surpassing the previous, so it only makes sense that these new gens are going to exceed their predecessors in this way. Anyways, gone a little bit off track there, but if Shinki was to get this massive power up and return to the battlefield, but the idea is that alongside Kawaki, who will also come to this battlefield, they will together be able to seal Momoshiki away until Boruto is able to retake control over his body. But at the same time, this is assuming they can force Jura away from this situation, which would also mean that they need to at least relatively overwhelm Jura in terms of power, which I don't think Momoshiki and Shinki could do alone, regardless of how strong this power up makes Shinki, which is why I see Kawaki also joining this battle. I think that with awakened no limit to Kawaki at this battlefield, they can at the bare minimum force Jura to retreat. Now I think they wouldn't necessarily just outright beat Jura because that's a little bit too far, as Jura is likely going to be one of the final villains in this series, but I think that it will no longer become worth it for Jura to continue with this battle with the risks of him actually dying. He would just be like, all right, I'm out, Boruto, I will be coming back for you. I see that kind of being another situation again. But this would also in turn allow us to see the full capabilities of a limitless Kawaki. Now taking a quick step back, if you think about the goal of this arc alongside the previous arc, it seems as though if all of what I predicted in this video does turn out to become true, everybody is undergoing new awakenings, but at the same time none of them have really got full control over this new power. Before Sarada unlocked her Mangekyo Sharingan, I was predicting that this power will allow her to beat Ryu, however she won't be able to maintain this power and will likely run out of chakra or energy from using it, which we obviously ended up seeing. With Boruto using his karma, he will become much stronger obviously, but once he loses control, the power is basically meaningless, as Momoshiki is just another threat, not a weapon that Boruto cannot control. And the same will go for Shinki. He may be able to become a lot stronger in this awakened state, but he likely won't be able to use or maintain the Rinnegan or the scale of the jutsu that he now has available to him, as it will be extremely taxing on his chakra and body, as these techniques are far superior to anything he could use previously. I think Kawaki will probably be the only one who doesn't see major drawbacks from the using his new power, but I also think it will be important that he's the one that doesn't actually need to train any further, which takes me on to my next point, which is the next arc of Two Blue Vortex is going to be a training arc. Since so many characters will have underwent a big awakening during this arc, but are unable to fully utilize this power, the next logical step is for all of them to undergo training in order to understand and use their awakenings to its fullest extent. I'll go over who I think will train who in a different video, but the ones I want to focus on are Boruto and Kawaki. Since it was established that Kawaki will help Boruto defeat the Shinju, as he deems them as a more pressing threat to Naruto than Boruto is currently, or at least he knows that he can't take them down on his own and he needs Boruto's help. It isn't too far-fetched to think that Kawaki helping Boruto train his karma will happen after this battle. And the reason that I think this will be likely is once Jura retreats, assuming that that is how it all goes down anyways, and if Kawaki is easily with a pinch of salt here, but let's just say easily detains Momoshiki, then theoretically Kawaki could propose to Boruto that they go and train together for Boruto to master using his karma seal. And the reason I think that this is so likely is because Kawaki was already already shown previously to have a much deeper understanding of how the karma works compared to Boruto, and he was the first person to even teach Boruto about how to use it properly. But because Kawaki is stronger than Momoshiki, there is no risk of Momoshiki running rampant, as if Momoshiki was to take over, Kawaki would be able to detain or suppress Momoshiki once again, allowing Boruto to just go back to normal and they just continue training. And taking it a step further, he would likely do this in a separate dimension where they don't run the risk of Boruto hurting others if he were to be taken over. This would then make sense as to why Boruto in the future is seen jumping straight into using his karma, because he is comfortable with using it without being taken over. Or alternatively, it could be a case of the only way Boruto and Kawaki are able to make it work is by allowing Boruto to only use his karma for a short time limit before there is a risk of him being taken over by Momoshiki. And then later down the line, it's a jougan, which allows Boruto to fully use his power freely. Either way, I don't think the jougan will come during this battle. If you do want me to do a video on why the jougan could come on this battle, and maybe like some signs or hints as to why the jougan would make sense in this battle, then make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Regardless, that is going to be a wrap for this video. Like I said at the start, I am very sorry for not uploading for so long, but I do hope that this time I can be a little bit more consistent. I'm going to try not burn myself out. I'm going to try and take it slow, try and do maybe 2 to 3 videos a week, but again, I can't promise anything. We'll see how it goes. But I do have some good ideas for videos in the future, so stay tuned for those ones. And as always, if you want to add anything or disagree with anything in this video, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. And if you did enjoy, then make sure to smash the like button, as it helps this video get pushed out to more and more people. Also, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see more content like this. With that all said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.